The fluorescent lights hummed softly in Mason's grocery on that ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Margaret Davies had worked there for 7 years, stocking shelves and helping customers with the same quiet dedication she brought to everything in her life. At 54, she'd learned that kindness costs nothing, and patience is its own reward. She was arranging cereal boxes when she heard it, a sound that made her heart clench. A child was crying, not the angry tantrum of a frustrated toddler, but the desperate, overwhelmed sobbing of a little soul in distress. Margaret turned to see a girl of about 8 years old, standing near the frozen food section. She had honey blonde hair pulled into 2 neat braids, and she wore a blue denim dress. The child's hands were pressed firmly over her ears, and tears streamed down her flushed cheeks. She clutched a small stuffed fox to her chest. The girl was rocking slightly, back and forth, her eyes squeezed shut. Margaret had seen this before. Her own grandson, Tommy, sometimes responded to the world this way when things became too much, too loud, too bright, too overwhelming. Without hesitation, Margaret walked over calmly. She didn't rush. She didn't crowd the child. She simply knelt down a respectful distance away and spoke in a low, gentle voice. "Hello, sweetheart. My name is Margaret. I work here at the store. I can see you're having a hard time right now." The girl didn't respond, but her sobbing quieted just a fraction. "That's a beautiful fox you have there," Margaret continued softly. "Does your fox have a name?" Through her tears, the little girl whispered, "Rusty. Rusty is a wonderful name," Margaret said warmly. "Would it help if we found a quieter place? Somewhere the lights aren't quite so bright?" The child nodded, still covering her ears. Margaret stood slowly and gestured toward the store's small employee break room at the back. "Would you like to come with me? We can sit down for a moment and it will be much calmer there." The girl hesitated, then took a small step forward. Margaret led her gently through the store, moving at the child's pace. Other shoppers stared, but Margaret paid them no mind. All that mattered was this frightened little girl. In the break room, Margaret dimmed the overhead lights and pulled out a chair. The girl sat down, her breathing still rapid but beginning to slow. Margaret sat across from her, keeping her movements slow and predictable. "Sometimes the world gets too noisy, doesn't it?" Margaret said quietly. "Too many sounds all at once. Too many people. It's okay to feel that way." The girl nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "My grandson Tommy is a lot like you," Margaret continued. "When things get overwhelming, he needs a quiet space too. There's nothing wrong with that. You're very brave for telling me what you needed." For the first time, the girl looked directly at Margaret. Her eyes were a striking hazel, still wet with tears but calming now. "I lost my daddy," the girl whispered. "We were shopping, and then there were so many people, and the music was so loud, and I couldn't find him." Margaret's heart ached for her. "We'll find your daddy, sweetheart. I promise." "What's your name?" "Emma Caldwell." "That's a beautiful name, Emma. Would you like to stay here where it's quiet while I have someone call for your father over the store speaker?" Emma nodded gratefully. Margaret stepped to the door and quietly asked a passing stock clerk to make an announcement. Then she returned to Emma, pulling a small package of crackers from her pocket and offering them. "Sometimes when we're upset, a little snack can help," she said with a warm smile. Emma accepted the crackers and nibbled one carefully. They sat together in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Margaret didn't push conversation. She simply stayed present, offering her calm, steady presence. Then the break room door burst open. A man in his mid-40s stood in the doorway, his face pale with worry. He had dark hair, wore an expensive navy suit that seemed out of place in the small-town grocery store, and his eyes immediately found Emma. "Emma!" he breathed, relief flooding his features. "Daddy!" Emma jumped from her chair and ran to him. He scooped her up, holding her tightly, his eyes closed. "Thank God, oh thank God, I was so worried, sweetheart." "I got scared," Emma said against his shoulder. "Everything was too loud and I couldn't see you." "I know, baby. I'm so sorry. I should have been paying closer attention." The man looked over Emma's head at Margaret, his eyes glistening. "Thank you. Thank you so much for taking care of her. Margaret stood. She's a wonderful child. Very brave. She told me what she needed and we found a quiet place together. You understood, the man said softly, wonder in his voice. You knew what to do. My grandson has autism, Margaret explained gently. I recognized the signs. Emma just needed some calm and quiet. The man nodded slowly, tears now openly streaming down his face. Most people don't understand. They stare or they judge, or they tell me I should discipline her better. You just helped, Margaret smiled. Every child deserves kindness, Mr. Caldwell. Emma is a treasure. Before the man could respond, Margaret's supervisor, Mrs. Patricia Norton, appeared in the doorway. She was a stern woman in her 60s with steel gray hair pulled into a tight bun, and her expression was thunderous. Margaret Davies, what do you think you're doing? She snapped. You abandoned your post to sit in the break room? We have deliveries to unpack and you're in here chatting? I was helping a lost child, Margaret said calmly, though her stomach tightened. Helping? You removed a customer's child from the floor without permission. Do you have any idea of the liability? You could have... She helped my daughter, the man interrupted, his voice quiet but firm. My daughter was having a meltdown and this woman knew exactly what to do. She was kind when Emma needed it most. Mrs. Norton barely glanced at him. Be that as it may, we have protocols. Margaret, you're written up. Consider this a formal warning. One more incident like this and you're terminated. Now get back to work. Margaret's cheeks flushed, but she nodded. She'd expected this. Mrs. Norton ran the store by the book with little room for human compassion. The man looked stunned. You're punishing her for helping my child? Store policy, Mrs. Norton said crisply. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a business to run. She turned and left. Margaret bent down to Emma's level one more time. You take care, sweetheart. And remember, it's okay to ask for what you need. Emma hugged her suddenly, wrapping small arms around Margaret's neck. Thank you for being nice to me. Margaret's eyes welled with tears. You're very welcome, Emma. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, pressing it into Margaret's hand. Please, if there's anything I can ever do for you, anything at all, call me. I mean that. Margaret glanced at the card. It read, James Caldwell, Chief Executive Officer. Caldwell Industries? She looked up in surprise, but James was already leading Emma toward the exit, his hand protectively on his daughter's shoulder. Margaret tucked the card into her apron pocket and returned to work, her heart still full despite the reprimand. 3 weeks passed. Margaret continued her work with the same dedication, but she noticed Mrs. Norton watching her constantly, waiting for any small mistake. The workplace felt tense, and Margaret found herself walking on eggshells. Then, on a Friday afternoon, corporate representatives arrived at the store. 2 people in business attire, carrying briefcases and looking very official. They spent hours in Mrs. Norton's office. The next morning, Margaret was called in before her shift. Mrs. Norton sat behind her desk, her expression unreadable. Margaret, I'm letting you go. The words hit like a physical blow. What? Why? Your performance has been inadequate. We need employees who follow protocol. This is effective immediately. Margaret felt tears prick her eyes. 7 years of loyalty, of showing up early and staying late, of treating every customer like family, it meant nothing. Is this because I helped that little girl? Margaret asked quietly. This is because you don't follow the rules, Mrs. Norton said coldly. Clean out your locker, numb. Margaret gathered her few belongings, a spare sweater, a photo of her grandchildren, a coffee mug that said World's Best Grandma. She walked through the store one last time, saying quiet goodbyes to coworkers who looked shocked and sad. As she pushed through the front doors into the afternoon sunlight, carrying her box of belongings, she felt lost. How would she pay her bills? She was 54, not young in the job market. Who would hire her now? She stood on the sidewalk, blinking in the brightness, trying not to cry. Mrs. Davies? Margaret turned. James Caldwell stood before her, and he wasn't alone. Emma held his hand, and she broke into a huge smile when she saw Margaret. Miss Margaret! Emma cried happily. Emma, sweetheart, Margaret said, managing a smile despite everything. How wonderful to see you. James looked at the box in her arms, then at the store behind her. His expression darkened. They fired you. It wasn't a question. Margaret's shoulders sagged. Yes, just now. Because you helped Emma. She nodded, unable to speak. James's jaw tightened. He looked down at his daughter, then back at Margaret. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. For the last 3 weeks, I've been trying to figure out how to thank you properly. You showed my daughter compassion when she needed it most. You understood her in a way most people never do. You made her feel safe. He paused, gathering himself. And they punished you for it. It's all right, Margaret said softly, though it wasn't. I'd do it again. I know you would, James said. That's exactly why I'd like to offer you a position. Margaret blinked. I'm sorry? Caldwell Industries runs educational and support programs for children with special needs. We're always looking for people who truly understand. People with patience, empathy, and real-world experience. He smiled gently. People like you, Mrs. Davies, I'd like you to come work for us. Head of our Family Resource Center. Better pay, full benefits, and you'd be helping families navigate what Emma and I navigate every day. Margaret's mouth fell open. I don't have a degree in education or social work. You have something better. You have a heart that understands. You have lived experience. That's worth more than any credential. James placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You deserve to be somewhere that values your kindness, not punishes it. Emma tugged on Margaret's sleeve. Please say yes, Miss Margaret. Daddy says you could help lots of kids like me. Tears spilled down Margaret's cheeks, but this time they were tears of relief and joy and overwhelming gratitude. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I would be honored. James smiled, his own eyes wet. Then welcome to the team. 3 months later, Margaret sat in her bright, comfortable office at the Caldwell Industries Family Resource Center. Photos of her grandchildren lined her desk, and a steady stream of families came through her door each day, parents seeking advice, children needing understanding, people looking for connection and support. She'd found her calling, and on her wall hung a small framed photograph. Emma Caldwell, grinning and holding her stuffed fox, Rusty. Beside it, a note in a child's careful handwriting. Thank you for being kind when I was scared. Love, Emma. Margaret touched the frame gently and smiled. Sometimes, she thought, the moments when we're simply human, when we choose compassion over protocol, connection over convenience, those are the moments that change everything, not just for the person we help, but for ourselves. That's the real gift of kindness. It comes back to us in ways we never expect, opening doors we didn't know existed, leading us exactly where we're meant to be. Margaret had lost a job that day in the store, but she'd found something far more valuable. She'd found purpose. She'd found family. And she'd found proof that goodness in the end is always rewarded.